Good morning, class. And today I'm going to be reviewing with adding and subtracting fractions. And so in fifth grade, something new in fifth grade that you did not learn in fourth was to add and subtract fractions with unlike denominators. So I'm going to go ahead and give you some examples. And I'm going to start with 1. So if I'm adding 3/4 plus 1/2, for example. Okay, so here we have two fractions and they have different denominator. So one of the things that you have to remember is that every time you add and subtract fractions, you have to have the same denominator. You cannot just add it as it is. Okay, they have to have the same denominator. So we're going to find the common denominator. How do we do that? Well, let's go ahead and start by finding the multiples. Okay, I'm going to find the multiples of 4 and the multiples of 2. I'm going to start with my smallest number. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and list it. 2, 4, and I don't have to keep going and going and going if I already see that there's one common here, right? Because the 4, and the 4 here match. So this is my common denominator. And not only do I want just a common denominator, I want the least common denominator. What does that mean? It means that I want the smallest number in common. In this case, 4. So I'm going to change. So 3/4 is going to stay the same. But I want to find now the equivalent fraction of a half with a denominator of 4. How do we do that? Okay, well, I'm going to find the equivalent fraction of a half where 4 is the denominator because that's my least common denominator. So if to get to 4, I have to multiply the 2 by 2. 2 times 2 equals 4. If I multiply the denominator by 2, then I have to multiply the numerator by 2. So that 1 times 2 equals 2. So 2/4 equals the same as a half, but now this is a fraction that I can use to add because it will have the same denominator as my 3/4. So now I am ready to add, and I'm going to rewrite that. So here I have 3/4. And I'm just recopying this, okay? But now instead of putting a half, I'm adding my equivalent fraction of 2/4 plus 2/4. And that way I can just add the numerator and the numerator. 3 plus 2 equals 5. And then my denominator stays the same. So 3/4 plus a half, or 2/4, is equal to 5/4. Now this is a fraction greater than 1. If you want to rewrite it into a mixed number, you can do that because your numerator is bigger than your denominator. So the 4 fits into the 5 one time. And so after fitting it one time, you still have 1 left over. So that's 1/4. 1 and 1/4. Okay, I'm going to give you another example, but now I'm going to do it with subtraction. So, for example, I'm going to say that I have 2 7s and I'm going to say 2/3 minus 2 7s. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 2/3 minus 2 7s. And so we're going to go ahead and begin by, remember, when you're adding and subtracting fractions, always, you need to make sure that you have the same denominator. And in this case, we don't. So that means that we need to find the common denominator, a common denominator. And I'm going to start by finding the multiples so that I can find the least common factor. And so in this case, or multiple, I'm sorry, the least common multiple. And so I'm going to list them, 3 and 7. You can all do it, we're doing this to the side. So let's go ahead and find the multiples of 3. We go 3, 6, 9, because I'm doing multiples, 12, 15, 18, 21. And I'm going to find the multiples of 7. 7, 14, 21. Okay, there you go. I see that I have a common already, which is 21. And I don't see no other digits, common factors smaller than 21. So 21 is my least common multiple. Okay, we can also use the abbreviation LCM for least common multiple. You will see this again in 6th grade. So make sure that you remember that the terminology. This is your least common multiple. And in future coming weeks, I'm also going to introduce you to the words in math in Spanish, because math in 6th grade for you guys, for most of you, will be in Spanish. So least common multiple is 21 for this example. And so I'm going to have to find the equivalent fractions of 2/3 and 2/7 to be able to subtract, and are using 21 as our denominator. So let's start by finding the common denominator, the equivalent fraction of 2/3. And 2/3 is our first digit. This will go on the top, because in subtraction you cannot flip them, right? We cannot use the associative property in subtraction. We cannot switch the numbers. So 2/3 minus 2/7, 2/3 is our top number. So let's start with that one, okay? And we're subtracting by 2/7, and 2/7 is our second number. So that one goes on the bottom. And we're going to find the equivalent fraction. That's another term that you need to make sure that you're comfortable with. Equivalent fraction. What does that mean? Equivalent fraction means that it's equal. They have the same value. Just written different numbers, but they equal the same. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with this. 3, we found that 21 is our common denominator. So now I need to think, okay, 3 times what number equals 21? So 3 times what number gives me 21? So that for that you need to know your multiplication, right? Facts. That's very important. Or also you listed them here, so I know that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that means 3 times 7 equals 21. So if I multiply the denominator by 7, I need to multiply the numerator by 7. So 2 times 7 is equal to 14. Okay, so that's the equivalent fraction of 2/3. 14 over 21 is the equivalent fraction. Now we need to find the equivalent fraction of 2/7 using 21 as our denominator. And we do the same process. 7 times what number equals 21? Okay, so if you look here, 1, 2, 3, right? 7 times 3 equals 21. And if I multiply by 3 the denominator, that means that I need to multiply the numerator by the same digit, which is 3. 2 times 3 equals 6. Now I can actually do the subtraction. So now I can subtract 14 21s, which is my 2/3, minus 6 over 21. Because remember, in subtraction or adding of fractions, you only add or subtract the numerator, not the denominator. That's why you have to have the same denominator. 14 minus 6 equals 14 minus 6 equals 8. And to check your work, you can always add your difference with the number you're taking away, and it should give you the first digit in your subtraction. And then the denominator stays the same. So that's 8 over 21. Now, every time you finish, you gotta make sure that it's your least, that it's simplified. It's in its simplest form. That means that I cannot divide this more to make it smaller. And the way that you can check that is by again writing the factors of both the numerator and the denominator. Okay, so remember, when I'm finding the common multiple, I'm writing the multiples of 3 and 7. When I want to simplify, I write the factors. What are the factors? What two numbers can I multiply to get 8? So my factors of 8 is 1 and 8, right? Because 1 times any number is 8. And then I know that 2 times 4 equals 8. So 2 and 4 are factors. And now my factors of 21, I know that 1 and 21 are factors. And 3 and 7 are factors. Now I need to check, do I have any common ones? No, right? 1 is common, but we don't count 1 when we do this because it'll just give you the same thing. Other than that, there's no common factor. So this is another term that you need to know. I'm looking for my common factor and I don't have one. That means that it's already in its simplest form. So the answer is 8 over 21. But if I did have a common factor, then I would divide the numerator and the denominator by that common factor to find its simplest form. One of the tips that I gave you guys in class when we were covering this is that if both numbers are, for example, even numbers, then you can for sure divide both by 2. So you know that you can simplify it. All right, hope this helps. Remember, the Cons Academy also has videos, but I kind of just like to go over everything. So if you feel that I went over it too fast, go to the videos on cons because they break it up by each section. Nobody has told me that they need help with any of the concepts, so that's why I haven't dedicated to one particular thing. Make sure that if you are stuck in something, you let me know so that I can give a more specific video on that concept. All right? Thank you for watching.